Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, April 26th in the year of 2022, and welcome to another edition, actually our 84th edition of Tuesdays with Thom, brought to you by the Best Girl Consulting Firm, and we're coming to you today from Savannah, Georgia. Well, Best Girl, our sponsor on TWT, has been in existence since 2004. I mentioned that because we're going to talk about small business today. In May, Best Girl, we will celebrate our 35th year in existence. The company has grown from its beginnings in my hometown of Birmingham, Alabama, as Thom Gossam Communications in May of 1987. Subsequently, it was merged with Witt Management Consulting in the late 1990s and became JTG Consulting. In 2004, we became Best Girl Inc., a firm that offers, as the ad says, customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Our clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Today's show focuses on certified minority businesses, which, based on our ownership, could qualify us as one. Being a certified minority-owned business is not just about being Black. It is mostly about being successful. We'll have that discussion on today's show with our G-List guest, Brian Wire, President and CEO of the Gulf Coast Minority Chamber of Commerce. This edition of Tuesday with Thom, of course, is sponsored by our partners, the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Best Girl has been providing customized solutions to executive issues for 34 years, and let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
It's a solution that fits your needs. So let's get to the roundtable regulars and introduce Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker. I'm going to start off with Michael Walker this morning. Michael Walker is out of Atlanta, Georgia, and he owns several businesses. And so as we're talking about minority-owned businesses and so on and so forth, I'm going to start off with Michael. Michael, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, Thom. I hope you are too today.
I'm doing pretty good. I can't complain. So you've been an entrepreneur for several years. We had a laugh about that earlier as to why we've been in business for so long. But you are a certified minority-owned business. Is that correct?
I am. I do have a business that is certified as a minority-owned business here in Atlanta. It's certified with the Georgia Department of Transportation and through MARTA, which is the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority.
And what tell us about what are you doing?
Well, that particular side of the business, we focus on providing some financial services. We do bonding, a lot of insurance type projects, but we're focusing on small businesses that have government related contracts. And many times when you have a small business or minority owned business that are contracting with the state government or the local, which would be a municipality, or the Fed, they have to meet a certain criteria as far as their awarding of contracts, because most of those public projects are funneled or financed with taxpayers' money. And so when you talk about taxpayers' money, that's the public money. So they're set up so that a certain percentage of those awards should go to small businesses, minority-owned businesses, and what have you. So they set up a program called certification, basically meaning you certify to prove that you have the knowledge and wherewithal to run and be successful in your chosen endeavor.
Okay. Sounds good to me. So I was going to ask you, do you have any advice for those people who are interested in joining this program. I'm sure Brian will give it to you, but I just wanted, since you've been doing it for a while, I just wanted to pick your brain.
Well, I certainly would encourage it, because what it does, they provide a lot of resources that will help you not only with management of your business from a financial standpoint by applying accountants and CPAs to help you manage it financially. They help you with marketing, and they actually open some doors for you so that you can grow your business and get some contracts. So I would say for anybody that's interested in starting a business, the first thing is to make sure that you have adequate or sufficient training, experience, and the ability to manage a business, whether it's in janitorial services, IT, or what have you. And then you go and apply for one of these programs and let them know that you're available for business and to do business and what you can do, and get certified. The process is not that difficult, especially if you have experience. And they have so many. And as you say, Brian will talk about it, but you have DBE, which is Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. You have woman-owned business, veteran-owned business, small business, minority-owned woman business enterprise. So it's a lot of different acronyms, but they all are designed to do the same thing, but to give those particular individuals that have been excluded from access to those contract opportunities.
There also is the opportunity, and I know you and I have talked about this, to get business from large entities.
Yes.
Large organizations, whether they be businesses, universities, or what have you.
Right.
I think there's that opportunity. And so, and oftentimes you have to, in my experience, you have to twist some arms to get that, to get it going.
Yes, you do. And you bring up an interesting point, because a lot of those companies, like say a General Dynamics or a Raytheon or any of these big Fortune 500 companies, they have a seat at the table when it comes to the federal government contracting or public sector to begin with. And sometimes the leadership do not feel that it's incumbent upon them to grant opportunities to small and minority-owned business, woman-owned businesses, and these programs are put in place to do that. And the flip side of it is that if these large companies are deriving a certain percentage of their revenue in the public sector, then they are encouraged, and mind you, I say encouraged, to go and provide some opportunities to the certified companies that can help them fulfill that contract. And when Brian get here, I have a story to tell about a tactic that I used to make sure that one of those companies did that, because they play a lot of games.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go to Barbara, and we'll come back to you, and then we'll get with Brian. Good morning, Barbara Wallace Edwards. Where are you?
Good morning, Thom and Michael. I'm in Birmingham. I'm at home this morning.
Oh man, it must be an unusual day or something.
It is. I'm sort of getting antsy. It's like I've been in town for 2 weeks now. What's going on? I got to find somewhere to go.
So what's happening with you, Barbara?
Well, Thom, I want to start this morning by saying congratulations to Frank Thomas. I don't know if you all heard the news, but Frank Thomas, the Auburn University decided to, they announced this past weekend that the university would honor the Big Hurt, as he was called, while he played football and baseball at Auburn. But a star baseball player, they're honoring him by dedicating a statue in his honor at Plainsman Park. The statue was approved during the Board of Trustees meeting on this past Friday, and it will be unveiled at some point during the 2023 season. And one thing that I did not know, but Frank is was the first and only SEC baseball player to be inducted in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame at this point. Did you all know that?
No.
You say only SEC player?
He's the first and only. Yes.
Wow.
To this point, now I guess there may be some. Yeah, that's what the
to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Cooperstown.
Yeah.
So really proud of him.
Mississippi State. I can't think of his name, but he played with the Giants. I thought he Okay. Oh, well, good.
Yeah.
So I know the inscription they're going to put on Frank's statue, don't you?
Who won't know what they're going to say?
And she'll like it too.
You might want to explain to everyone else what that means.
Well, they'll see the commercial.
Okay.
Already.
Well, congratulations to the big herd. And I also want to offer congratulations to my sister Lori Wallace, who's one of our regular viewers, and she's already watching because she's texted me this morning saying, where are you? You're normally the first one on. You're not on the show yet. So Lori Michael came on first this morning, but I'm here. But she and her classmates, the Viger High School class of 1981, celebrated their 41st class reunion this past weekend. So they had a really busy weekend. So good morning, Lori, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Lori. I didn't see Lori over here. Oh, there she is. Good deal. All right. Okay, Barbara. Now I'm going to run this by you because you talked about your hobby, and then Michael probably can speak to this. Your hobby that you were thinking about turning into a business.
Yes.
And hobbies that turn into businesses, you generally find out, this is a lot of work, man.
It is a lot of work.
It was fun when I was just
it was fun when I was doing it for fun, and just when I wanted to.
The lady we had on, the baker from Atlanta.
Yes.
And she talked about how everybody liked what she was doing and they loved her products and so on. And then she had to start doing it for a living, and she was doing it 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
It became a different thing. And so
absolutely.
I think sometimes people don't realize, to me, it's almost like having a child. I mean, it's every day.
Well, it's a full-time job. You're everything, especially with me being, very small. You talk about small businesses. I'm a level beyond small business. So when you're just one man shop and you're doing everything yourself, the shopping, the cooking, the preparation work, the deliveries, the collecting of the money, it's a full-time job. So yeah, I've been up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, getting back up at 6 a.m. trying to get orders out. So I do it now when I only advertise, and I very limited advertising, I will say, to a small group of people at certain times of the year. I'm not delving into the full-time year thing right now. So it keeps you very, very busy.
Well, I think you, when we talked about it, you pretty much explained why you were involved and what your intentions and goals were. Michael, what brought you into business?
Well, let's see, how might I put it? Let's just say that I came along at a time when I had a difficulty breaking through that glass ceiling, and I wasn't able to get promoted in corporate America and wasn't given the opportunity. So I decided to promote myself, and I did so by starting my own business.
Okay. And how many years ago was that?
I started my first business in 1986.
Okay. Wow.
Yes.
Okay, so you've been there. I started in 1987, so you've been a year longer than me. May of 1987. So next month will be one of our anniversaries here.
Well, I started in February of 1986, and there's some significance to that, Tom. If you recall, back in the days when you were recruiting for Bell South, and you got me this opportunity, and one of 3 interviews, and the one department that decided to take a chance on me was marketing. But when you called me up and told me that I passed the exams and they wanted me and they were going to hire me, 2 things you said to me. One, you said, we got to wait till we get an affirmative action position available for you. And that's when I said, well, what are you talking about? And you said, and I said, you mean an EEOC? And you said, yes. And I said, oh, so I got to wait to go into a position that is pegged for an African American. And you said, absolutely. And I said, okay, well, and you said, so it's going to be a couple months. So when would you like to start? This was in December when we were talking. And I said, well, my birthday is in February. Let's make it February. And that's what happened. And every time that I made a move, especially like starting my first business, I chose the month of February because that was reminding me why I was doing what I was doing.
Well,
That's great.
it was interesting. I was a management recruiter at Bell South. Went all over the Southeast, talking to college graduates, people who were about to graduate, and bringing them into the management program at Bell South. And we were under a consent decree, which means we needed to increase the numbers of quote minorities that we were going to hire, be they black, be they women, be they disadvantaged physically or what have you. And you had to administer this test to them. And the test really, in my opinion, wasn't related directly to the job. The test was more like a thing to keep people out rather than to let people in.
Yeah.
And but I was pretty much hamstrung in that if you didn't quote pass the test, there was nothing I could do. And so you would have, I think you'd have to wait 6 months or a year before you could take it again. And so when Michael came in and passed the test, it was like, all right, I got a good one here. I got somebody. And
Right.
so I sent him over to marketing, and they had a need, and I thought it went very well, and Michael thought it went very well, and the guy called me up from marketing and said, "We love this guy. He's great." I said, "Oh, great. So you want to make an offer?" He said, "Well, no." He said, "We need to wait till we get a black slot, and we don't want to use up one of our black slots." And I said, "What?"
That still blows me away.
Yeah. And so that was.
And that was what, 1979, 1980?
That was around 82,
Wow.
81, because I started in 82.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Sad.
eventually they did, of course, hire him, but it was interesting. And I'll just, as a comparison, because when you have these standards set up that really aren't standards,
Mhm.
A young lady came in from the University of Alabama. She was a cheerleader. And they knew her. But when she came in that day, I was the only one there. So I administered the test to her, and she didn't pass the test. And so when my boss came in the next day, he asked me, "Did she come?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, but she didn't pass the test." And he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Well, she's already called me, and I'm going to let her come in again next week." Now, this was against protocol. I said, "Oh, okay. So, and are we going to retest her?" He said, "Yeah, but I'll give her the test this time."
Wow.
So, oh, okay. And so she passed, surprisingly, the next time. So it was an uphill
Wow.
thing,
Yes.
You're very limited in who you could get in and so on and so forth.
But and Thom, did that have any influence on you getting out of the corporate environment and moving and starting your
Yes.
own business? Yeah,
Yes, it
I could
did.
understand that.
It did. And we had to, one of the great things about Bell South, I thought, was you always had training. They don't train employees much anymore. They don't give them things that will uplift them further into the corporation. But one of the things you had to do was to write down or put down or whatever the position you aspired to at the company, what you wanted to do. And they were very good about helping you plot your course through the company. And so I told them I put down president, and I said, well, whoa, wait a minute. Now you can't be president. I said, so, I enjoyed this kind of little exercise. I said, well, why?
Right.
He said, well, you just can't. I said, well, why? Well, you just can't. So anyway,
You
at
were the
that
wrong
point,
color, but they
I,
couldn't say that.
I made up my mind at that point that I would be president of something.
Right.
And so that's when I knew for sure that I would leave. And I did. I stayed there 9 years. I got a lot of good out of it. And I made some really good friends, people who helped me in my business.
Right.
And matter of fact, when I left them, it was like the military. I left, but I went back to work for them as a consultant for the next 13 years.
Wow.
So it turned out well. But yeah, it's sometimes you're forced into making a move that you didn't necessarily want to make. But yeah, so they kind of pushed me out there, but it turned out well. So
and you hear those type of stories all the time, how individuals just decide, I'm not going to go any further where I am. They pretty much, like Michael said, there's a glass ceiling there, and they're not going to let me get past that. So
I think I would have done okay.
Of course.
I wouldn't have been president.
Right.
And I probably would have done okay. But there was a part of me that maybe I would have wanted to go out on my own, even if they hadn't told me. Even if they had told me I could be president. I think you just have that itch, and you need to scratch it. And I learned so much from them. And the thing, and then I had the job I had. I would be responsible for when we would bring consultants in. They would have to run through my boss, who would run them through me first, and so he could then approve it. And I just saw how much money they were making.
Yes.
Wow, I'm on the wrong end of this thing.
Yes, I've heard that too.
Anyway, anything else? We're going to get to the G list here. Anything from either one of you?
I just want to offer condolences, Thom, to Velton Johnson, his wife, LaCherie. His Velton's sister passed away. The funeral services are later today. So offer condolences to the Johnson family.
Very much so. Condolences to Velton. They'll be okay.
Thank you.
Okay, then let's go to Sean and do Got a Minute. Sean, are you out there somewhere?
Good morning. My name is Sean Jones, and this is Got a Minute. Hello to everyone joining in with us this morning. I hope everyone is well and in good spirits this week. We're coming into the last leg of April already, and it feels like we're just getting started. Time flies when you're having fun, right? Right. So are you ready for a fun fact? Did you know that on this day in 1954, the polio trials began? Polio is an infectious disease that has existed since ancient times and is caused by a virus. It occurs most commonly in children and can result in paralysis. The trial involved 1.8 million children at the Franklin Sherman Elementary School in McLean, Virginia. President Franklin D. Roosevelt was diagnosed with polio in 1921 at the age of 39 and was left paralyzed from the waist down and was forced to use leg braces and a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Today, polio has been eliminated throughout much of the world due to the vaccine. However, there is still no cure for the disease. Thank you for joining in. My name is Sean Jones, and this is Got a Minute.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for that. I wonder, you reckon if people were balking about the virus, the vaccines at that time as well. You just have that. I think the thing about the whole COVID thing is we've been doing vaccines for as long as we can, all our lives.
I was going to say all of my life. I know they've been doing vaccines. So
Yeah.
But anyway, it became and has become political.
Mm-hmm.
And in the political world, it doesn't have to make sense. It just has to divide people.
Exactly.
Okay, well, why don't we go to the G list? And Hollywood has the A list, and here on Tuesdays with Thom, we have the G list. And our G list guest today is Brian Wire. Brian is the president CEO of the Gulf Coast Minority Chamber of Commerce. Brian also served on the city of Pensacola's mayor's transition team. He was selected to the 2019 U.S. Global Leadership Florida Advisory Committee and is the 2021 PACE Award Community Advocate of the Year. The vision of the Gulf Coast Minority Chamber of Commerce is to be a beacon for small and minority business enterprises for economic development and business development and wealth distribution along the Gulf Coast. Their mission is to serve as an advocate and the conscience of the minority and small business community, promoting and assisting in procurement opportunities, business development strategy, increasing operating capacity, and other economic access while striving to ensure economic fairness for all. Let's get Brian. Brian, good evening.
Hello, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Doing wonderful, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Tell me about the Minority Chamber of Commerce. Let's just start there. We'll go from there.
Well, the Gulf Coast Minority Chamber of Commerce was founded in 2018 in October. And previously, we were the Gulf Coast African American Chamber of Commerce for over 20 years in the community. I came on board in 2017, worked with the community, and found a need to even expand our reach to all minority groups, and that's how we were founded.
Okay. And when you say all minority groups, inclusive of
minorities by race, we do help work with women. We do work with veterans. We do work with any groups that need assistance and need help. We're there for them.
Okay. Because we've got Michael, who's in business, Barbara's in business, I'm in business. I'm going to bring them on now, and we'll expand our conversation at this point. So let's bring Barbara and Michael on, and let's go to Michael for a question for Brian.
Okay.
Hi,
Good
Mike.
morning, Brian. How you doing, man?
Good to see you.
Thanks for being with us, and it's certainly a very informative topic, and it's one that I have a great deal of passion about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we know the intent of the minority programs and what they're trying to do.
Yes.
But on the other side, do you get pushback from that, especially when you're dealing with some large corporations? How do you deal with that pushback?
You know, we receive that all the time. What we hear often from large corporations is that I can't find good Black businesses. I can't find good Black employees. Here in Pensacola, where we're from here, we really push that envelope. We have a philanthropist here named Quint Studer, and he does a lot of development in town. He said, I'm going to make a covenant with the community. If you big contractors can't find Black businesses, Black employees, at least 30%, then you're not going to work with me. He made it very clear. So he forces them to ensure to go out and find the employees, find the businesses, mentor them, and have them be able to provide services for those larger corporations.
Well, see, that is exactly key to making this program successful. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to Thom a little bit earlier. I had the pleasure of serving on the board of directors of MARTA, the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority here.
Yes.
And we have a DBE program of about 18 to 20% on all their contracts where people come in and do rail, bus, and all that stuff. Had a situation where what a lot of the majority-owned companies were doing, they come in and partner with a minority company that was DBE certified with MARTA just for MARTA, okay?
Yes.
And then when they go off back to Pennsylvania or somewhere else, they do not offer any other opportunity. So in other words, they're using the DBE to get into MARTA, and then they take off. And this one particular DBE came to me and complained that they were now taking his employees. And they were able to offer a larger benefit package. So they were taking away the talent that he had and then not giving him any opportunities outside of Atlanta and outside of MARTA. So what I did was I picked up the phone and I called that CEO of that company. I had him meet me downtown Atlanta to have a discussion about that. And
exactly. I think that's part of karma. Eventually that'll catch up with you. But in the short term, sometimes you got to push karma a little bit and let them know where you stand and how you're going to make things right. Here at our chamber, we're very unique in the fact that we're the only chamber that both receive county and city funding. They provide funds to our chamber because they want to ensure that we have a better ratio of minority businesses working with them. So I worked very closely to track them. And it wasn't an easy battle. When I came here, I asked for numbers, show me what your minority business ratios were. I didn't have them. So I created my own. I went through records, I pulled them together. I went to a county commissioner meeting. I went to city council meeting and said, hey, look, guys, this is what I'm finding. Please tell me if I'm wrong. And they researched it. They said, Brian, you're right. This is our numbers now. I said, I'm not hurting you or punishing you for you. I'm not going to beat you up, but let's establish a baseline. This is where we're at. Let's track this and put programs in place that we know will be successful to increase these numbers, or things that we have in place of the reasons why these numbers are so low. And sometimes you got to go out there and just let them know this is where we're at, and let's find a way to make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you did there. You used their numbers to present your case.
Yes.
I do that all the time. And that's the only thing that they understand, is when you use their numbers.
Yeah, I went to a school board meeting and we just didn't have good numbers. So I went to the school board meeting. I researched the files. I went through details to show how many businesses that they were using locally versus not local, how many minority businesses were being used. And I showed them the numbers, and there was just gasp in the audience because they had no clue that it was that low and that so much money was being sent outside of our community. And they put programs in place to help increase those things. But I used numbers that I had available and said, hey, please show me if I'm wrong and let me know that I'm not doing this the right way. And they found my numbers to be correct. But it's not an easy road either. You get pushback. You get trying to be, you guys are my family and friends, so I'll talk very candid with you. But in 2012, the city of Pensacola did a disparity study, and it was because minority contractors weren't getting opportunities. They paid, I think, over $250,000, had a 470-page disparity study created. And in that disparity study, the non-minority businesses said, yeah, you're right. Minority businesses don't get good opportunities. They said that basically they found the good old boy system was in place. People had generational wealth, non-minorities in place. They gave bids and contracts to their friends, their families, and it was impossible almost for minority businesses to break into that. Well, that study was very helpful because from that study, they created a minority program in place, business program in place. But without a study like that, local government can't create programs because they don't have a real need for it if a study does not exist to do that work. And I apologize for my voice going in and out. I got these seasonal allergies going on right now. The trees are blooming and things are popping. And I'm putting down some pills to keep my voice going. I don't know what's happening. I keep going from high to low. So I apologize if my voice kind of goes a little in and out a little bit, but I'll get through it.
Okay. Barbara, you got something?
I do. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us today. I know you attended school at the University of West Florida, and after graduating, you moved out to Tampa and started working at PricewaterhouseCoopers. So you worked in the corporate environment as well, just like Michael and Thom and myself. How important do you think that is for individuals to go to work in a corporate environment before striking out on their own and starting their own business?
I think it's so valuable. I think it's one of the best things you can do. For me, I internship with IBM while I was in UWF. And it was a great experience I had interning with them. That took me out of Pensacola to another environment, a bigger market. They immediately wanted me to get hired on right after I graduated. Back to Tampa for a while, then to PricewaterhouseCoopers. And within a short amount of time, they made me team in charge of the software support engineers. Then they offered me a position to be in charge of the whole data center, to build a data center down in Tampa, and to close the data center up in Floral Park, New York, and bring the people down to Tampa. I was in my 30 years old, a young Black male, people that reported me were 50, 60 years old, mainframe experts for years. They're like, who's this young whippersnapper coming in here telling me what to do? You don't have the pedigree to do this. I said, you're right, I don't. I want to work with you, but I have the ability to work with people. I'm going to look out for your back, and you're going to make our company better. So at one point in my 30s, I was managing about 125 people, charge of a data center for one of the biggest auditing accounting firms down in Tampa at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and the experience was valuable. I learned a lot of things about corporate America that I loved, and some things I didn't like, to be honest with you, that I saw the challenges and the struggles people had when I was the only minority in the room, when everyone else wasn't, and what things were being said and done. So from that experience, I learned that you have to work for yourself, advocate for yourself. You have to make sure that you understand how the world really is, and you want to build your business in a way that represents your values and have that integrity in place for you. So I think that experience is definitely very valuable. I received the first coaching award they had for IT across the whole company down in Tampa. And it wasn't because I was Black, it was because of my skill and abilities. And I made sure everyone know that don't pick me as the only best Black person, pick me as the best person. And that's when you know you have value.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
I think one of the things we go back to, you know, when we talk about small business, and in this case, we're talking about small minority business, but small business, just general small business, has a great deal of the business that oftentimes small minority businesses are trying to get involved in. And I always just compare it to the prisons. Who do you think sell toilet tissue to the prisons? That's a big contract.
Right.
Because you're not selling to one prison, you're selling to in Alabama, you're selling to all the prisons across the state of Alabama. And so and oftentimes what happens is you have a small family business that has had that business for 30, 40 years, and it's very, very difficult to get in unless you have an advocate, unless somebody is advocating for a minority business program. It's very difficult. I always, people ask me, what do you see when you go to a football game? I said, I see contracts. I see contracts all over that stadium. And who has those contracts? Your minority kids are out there playing football. And they're buying tickets, but there are a lot of contracts being let that aren't going to people in the category that we're talking about.
And Thom, I will tell you, one of the biggest challenges we have at times is that, and I found this from different research and studies, is that minority businesses are a lot more at times skeptical of providing their business data, providing their information, filling the paperwork out. And I was approached one time on a panel discussion saying, Brian, we can't find minority businesses to do that. And I said, well, you have to build relationships. Why should a minority business that's been gone through all the struggles and challenges that we had all these years, that our parents gone through, our grandparents have gone through, trust and have faith that giving you the information and that you're going to do good for them? You got to go to those businesses, work with them, network, build a bond in place where they trust giving you their information. Throw out a few numbers here is that during COVID, 40% of minority businesses added new services as compared to 27% of all the other non-minority businesses. This was a McKinsey poll put out there. And we had over 1.1 million minority-owned businesses with 8.7 million workers, generating over $1 trillion for our economy. But, you know, the problem really is real here. It's not like people just thinking this is a problem. McKinsey study found out that large banks, they approved 60% of the loans for whites, only 50% of the loans for Hispanics, and only 29% of the loans for Blacks. This is statistical data McKinsey pulled together, one of the premier companies, finding this information out. They found that Blacks have less capital, and only 1% of Black businesses get the loan during their first year compared to 7% of white businesses. That's not a fact. That's not a fiction or a story. This is real numbers that they pulled together, showing that the challenges and struggles we have are truly real.
I agree. I think a lot of it also, and I think when you're a small business, you have to understand the need to build relationships. And those relationships, you know, when I talked about working at Bell South, when I left Bell South, I worked for them for another 13 years as a consultant, but that was because of the relationship that I had with the people who I had previously worked with. And a lot over these past 35 years, much of the business has come from relationships
Yes.
and building those relationships. I always say you build the relationships, and then what differentiates your business from somebody else? What makes you, what makes me want to deal with you?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm just dealing with a small business now. And this happens as well. I won't ever say anything to the guy, but I'll never hire him again.
Exactly.
He blew it. And that's what happens when people are dissatisfied with you. They generally don't walk up and tell you. They just don't hire you anymore.
Right. Right.
And you
And
have to go ahead, Brian.
And I'll tell you a quick story about relationships. What we put on is called How to Do Business with Your Local Government. So we'll have a workshop. Before COVID, we had in-person events where we would have our local county, city, water utility come in place and have businesses come to them. They do a quick little presentation. They talk to them and meet with them. After the event was over with, there was a young Black gentleman in there. He worked for an insurance company. He was talking to the guy in charge of purchasing our county, and he was telling them about them. They were sharing stories. He said, "Yeah, also I do auctioneer bidding on the side, and I do auctioneer stuff." And the guy in charge of purchasing here for our county said, "Oh my God, I've been trying to find a person to do bidding and auction work for months. I've turned down bids. I can't find anyone locally to do this." And just a side conversation of what he does on his side job led into him getting a job with the county to do work. And that's just the value of just talking and knowing people and getting a chance to share your stories. You'll find avenues to provide business for you.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit, Brian, and on the website you mentioned, and I'm paraphrasing now, but something to the effect of fighting systemic racism.
Yes.
And just a few minutes ago, you talked about these statistics and about how many banks are not awarding loans to minorities. That right there, those statistics that you pointed out, that's the definition of systemic racism that most people do not understand. When we as African Americans talk about systemic racism or the system that is racist, that's the stuff that we're talking about from that perspective. And most people do not understand, along with the barriers to entry. When you talk about getting minorities to put their information down on paper, we've always found out afterwards that the information you give them, they use it as a barrier to entry, such as bonding and what have you. You know, if you're doing public works building projects, the first thing they do is, well, you got to get us $1 million bond, knowing you don't have the financial wherewithal to do so. Right. Or a bank or somebody to support you. And that's why part of my business is to try to help minority contractors get bonding, because I understand that business.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you on that. And one of the things we do in the area is you got to shine light on some of these things. You got to say, hey, this exists out there. Our local airport here in town was a big project involved in it. Was most minority businesses just couldn't take on that landscaping project. So what they did was they subdivided it into smaller pieces to allow minority businesses an opportunity to get some of that work, as opposed to having a big, huge bond in place for the whole entire job. Sometimes I encourage minority business, start off small, get your foot in the door, take that smaller piece of work, prove yourself, prove your value, and then bigger things will come later. And that's one of the things we have to express to these companies, also these big corporations. Find ways to work with them, businesses, minority businesses, to get those relationships going and be part of it. We have in town, we're building a big hospital in town now, Baptist Hospital, a $660 million project. And they were committed from the very beginning towards working with minority businesses. They worked with me to pull a vendor fair together for our area. And now they have about 40% minority employees and local employees in place, but they were committed from the very beginning, intentionally saying that we're going to find ways to make sure that you can get work here. They took big concrete projects, made them smaller in place so that some of the smaller contractors, minority-wise, can do the work on that versus one big job that was, to be honest with you, easier, but they divided it intentionally on purpose to help out minority and local businesses. That's the kind of efforts that you have to show, you have to highlight, You have to tell a success story so that other businesses want to replicate that. And to be honest with you, challenge the other companies to do the same. And you got to put it out there sometimes. I do a lot of work with the newspaper and the TV stations here because I'm not for necessarily for myself or for our chamber, but highlighting those small businesses so that they can see that there's a path towards success. And I'll be honest with you, here in my office, I've had people come to my office here and they come in here just crying in tears because they feel like the barriers are so strong and they're taking care of their family. And I always ask the first question, are you running from a problem or are you running to a solution? Are you running from a corporate war that you don't like? And if so, you got to really understand what the motive is. Or are you running to your own business and being your own, person that has something that you want? There's a big difference there in place because you want to make sure you're running to something, not away from a problem, because those problems are going to follow you if you don't find a way to fix them.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
One of the other ways, and one of the ways when I first started was to sub with somebody.
Yes.
I'd worked with the Birmingham airport, and they divided the PR contract between myself and a majority firm. And, and then you still have the little things to work out within that relationship. Scott told me, one of the guys told me, he says, I said, okay, well, how do we want it? Let's sit down and work out how we're going to. He says, well, I got to figure out what you can do. It's like, well, while you're figuring out what I can do, I'm going to figure out what you can do. And then we'll figure out what we can do, because that's what they hired us to do. Right. And he told me that. He didn't realize it. I think one of the things when you guys talked about systemic racism, I think people think that, nobody's calling you the N-word anymore, so everything's fine. And no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about racism that's embedded within the system. Right. And you may not even recognize it because you're so used to doing things a certain way with certain people. Right. It goes back to the toilet tissue thing, and I always use that. But man, you could divide up some of those contracts and support a lot of small businesses. So anyway, Brian, Michael, Barbara.
Well, I was going to say, Thom, we talk about systemic racism and how people don't really recognize it. You talk to probably 1,000 people, and they'll tell you, all of them will say, "I'm not racist. I'm not a racist person." But you go deeper into the conversation and start breaking it down and start talking about, well, what do you think about this, or how do you feel about this type of situation? And they have to take a step back and look. And I don't know how we educate the masses. That was one of the things I was going to ask Brian. How do you educate the masses to make them realize you are a racist, or you have racist thoughts or racist motives sometimes that you don't even realize it?
Well, you confront it head on sometimes. I'm part of this group called the Equity Project Alliance. And what we did is we're called EPA. We're a group of about 15 leaders, black and white, male and female together, that build a relationship. Over a year and a half almost, we broke down bonds, we built bonds, we broke down barriers. The white people in the group admitted that they have some racial tendencies and that their parents may have been very racist and that they're trying to do better. The black folks in the room at the time realized that we could be racist against our own race because we were successful black people, and we were not maybe racist towards non-successful black people. And when you admit that in your heart and you see it, oh my God, you get a relation. So it was really good. We had this group. What we start doing is pulling together dinners. We'll pull 150 people together across the community, all different social statuses, CEOs, politicians. We'll get in the room, have roundtable discussions that are very profound. One of the questions we had was, how do you feel about white privilege? And everyone around that table would talk about it and share some stories. It was very awkward in the beginning, having those difficult conversations. But as we went on, it broke down more and more and more. People really had the ability to open up, but you have to bring up those really tough conversations piece by piece, and it gets better once you're more comfortable talking about it. One gentleman at one of the tables said, hey guys, he's a white older gentleman, very successful. He said, guys, I don't want minority people coming in taking what I have. I worked really hard for this, and I don't want it to be gone. It was an honest, candid feeling that you wouldn't normally hear out in public. But he shared that, and everyone else said, hey, we don't want to hand out. We want to hand up. We want the ability to work together with you to make you more successful and for us to get our piece and share the pie. So as you mentioned earlier, it's about talking about it. I currently serve on about 35 boards, commissions, or committees. And I get in there and I'm not afraid to jump in an area. I'm the only minority, the only person in there. And once people see you for a person, they can say, hey, this person's doing well. Maybe their whole race is fine.
Mhm.
In the beginning, they may think I'm not because of that. And the biggest challenge Thom mentioned earlier is the fact that if you're a minority business and you work on a project and you do bad, all minority business from that point are tainted.
That's right.
Yes.
I mean, I heard a story about a military base that had contracts and they brought some minority businesses in. Minority businesses didn't do a good job, didn't show up. They just, had some failures in place, failures that non-minorities may have too. But from that point on, the people in charge felt they couldn't trust minority businesses and they kind of blackballed them out for a very long time. Yeah. And that's the challenge we have. If I go out in the community, I do something really stupid or bad, they're going to say, oh my gosh, Brian's stupid and bad. He's supposedly the best Black person out there, or one of the best people. So I have to be really careful what I do and what I say, because I don't want to put a stigma on our whole entire race.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And you find that a lot of times, Brian, where, one person has a bad encounter with a minority, and then they label all minorities the same way. I can't work with another one because they're lazy, or they don't want to work hard, or they don't want to work, after hours, or do anything outside of the quote job requirements. But they don't do that with people of their own race, so again, that in itself is systemic racism, and again, they just don't realize that.
I think one thing that happens, that successfully happens, is when you allow people to say what they feel, and because that's how you get to know who they are. And so when somebody says something you don't agree with, when they say something I don't jump all over them and go to beat them up or what have you, because you're basically going to scare them off. You've got to let people be. I in speaking to the class, I speak to a class at Texas Tech, and there was a conversation about the Confederate flag, and I mean, if you like the Confederate flag, fine, but know what it is you say you like, because the flag that they're talking about now is not the flag from the Confederacy. It's the flag that was put up after the Voting Rights Bill was passed, and such as that. So it was direct. It was a direct attempt to marginalize what had happened, the progress that had happened. It wasn't against your grandfather fought for the Confederacy and so on and so forth. You can believe what you want to believe, but at least have some understanding of what the truth is. Ignorance is not bliss. I always say that.
That is so true.
Yeah. I like to say, just a minute, Brian, I think one of the reasons why that was so successful is that you guys didn't get into a shouting match.
Yes.
And you did exactly what Thom talked about. You let people talk, and then you talk through it, what have you, rather than ostracizing or, excluding someone because of what they said. And many times we are not able to solve these differences because we don't talk through it and listen. We may hear somebody, but we don't listen, and that's a big difference.
Well, and that's a huge difference. And listening is, and sometimes you can listen, and you still don't agree, but you respect the person for what they had to say, and that leads to a longer term relationship, as opposed to just trying to beat them up from the start, and you shut them down. And once you shut them down, you're never going to know what's on their mind.
Well, one of the things with Equity Project Alliance, when we met, we were all successful business people. We met, and the first thing we do is call a check-in. You have the floor, and you say, "I'm checking in. This is how I feel today. At this moment, this is how I feel. This is what's going on." So everyone else in that circle listens to that person, see how they're at, see maybe what they've been struggling with. And then we may provide some assistance or help out after that takes place. But it's all that exercise of letting the person talk, share their feelings in a safe environment, and listen. We were frustrated in the beginning because we were around for like 7 months. We're like, we haven't made any progress. We haven't done any move the needle. But we all reminded ourselves that we made the needle of us breaking down barriers, us listening to each other, talking, sharing stories. Out of a group of 15 of us, probably within the first, probably I would say any given day, 4 or 5 of us can start sharing tears and cry. And we'll tell stories that we haven't told our spouses, we haven't told our kids, that are really heartfelt because we trust the people in that room are not going to use that against us, and they're going to use it as a learning experience. We challenge each other softly, in a productive way. And if something is even said in a way that could offend people, we say, hey, you said that. People may take it this way if you say that in public,
Right.
But it all started out with just listening to the people around you, letting people know how you feel. And some days, you don't feel good. And I'll say, hey, I'm at 45% of the day, guys. I'm going to be here and be as present as I can, but I'm struggling because I had this thing happen to me earlier. And people understand, they build you up when you let them know those vulnerabilities are there.
Yes.
But it took us almost a year and a half to get there, which is a long time, especially for people who are really driven. But the value we have now as a group and unison we have is just phenomenal.
That's great.
That's great.
That's wonderful. Well, let's see. Anybody got anything else?
I just want to say thank
Brian?
you so much. I just want to say thank you so much for having me today. I heard you guys talking earlier and we chatted earlier. And like I said, you guys just feel like family and friends to me. That's why, I just heard you sharing stories and that networking you do and telling where you're at and what's going on. That's so valuable. I just wanted to make sure in this fast-paced world, people forget about that. And I always remind my businesses just to take things in stride. Be yourself, slow down sometimes, figure out what you want to do. And you guys are doing that so well. So thank you for the ability to listen in and be part of it and share with you today. And continued success. And I'd love to make sure I listen into your show and find out some other great things going on. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. It's great to be able to share and to listen. And then one of the things I think we pride ourselves on in this is just the information that goes out and to the people who tune in, and that they know some of the things. Some of the information that you've shared today. And so, before we go, Minority Chamber, I'm sure there's contact information all over the place. Is it people get in touch with? Do they get in touch directly with you or with?
Yeah, they can
people?
call. Yeah, our Gulf Coast Minority Chamber of Commerce. They can call our office at 850-438-3933. They can go online and look for the Gulf Coast Minority Chamber of Commerce. We have a Facebook page. We have a website. Yesterday, we started meeting with all the other Black chambers here in Florida. We now have an association we built up, and we had our first meeting in Tallahassee, talk with legislators and be there with them. And it was so valuable to find out what other Black chambers around our state were doing. It was the first time that we have ever done this, starting end of last year. And it's just so valuable to know who's out there, what they're doing, what kind of challenges we're having, what kind of successes that we're having. So feel free to go out there and look at our information. You can send us an email, and then we can add you to our contact list. You can get our newsletters. You can see all the activities that are going on our Facebook page. And we're not exclusively, reclined to this area. We have folks in different parts of the country that want to know what's going on here and want to work with us to help build some things in their area. So it's a great chance to find out what's going on.
One thing I'd like to add before we go is, particularly if you're younger and new in starting your own business, particularly if you're a minority, is don't get caught up in the political rhetoric. Politicians are politicians, and they say sometimes or do things sometimes solely for votes. And if that means they have to be divisive, then they have to be divisive. They don't have to be, but they choose to be divisive. And so you can't let that run you off from going in and having a conversation about how you can do business, because generally you'll find out that's for show. This is for votes over here.
Right.
The truth lies over here somewhere. And so don't let that run you off. Don't let that scare you off. Don't let that make you an enemy when you don't have to have one.
Right.
Right.
Okay, well, is that it? Thanks, everybody. Brian, thank
Thank
you,
you.
man. You're great. You were wonderful. I haven't been over to Pensacola lately, but I'll have to get over that way.
Yeah, come and visit us. Michael O'Neill's a good friend of ours with Parent University in the area.
Yeah.
So I know you guys have a connection, and he's a guy from Savannah that we would love to have over here when we can.
Okay, sounds good.
Take care,
right.
Take care, Barbara.
Thank you.
Man.
Bye, Brian.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that was great. My closing commentary today, or as I see it, today's show was informative, which is what we aim to do here on Tuesdays with Thom, get valuable information out to you. Michael and Barbara spend time weekly researching the subjects our G list represent, and we thank them. Today, we thank Brian Wire, not only for the information and his wisdom, but for his willingness to give of himself. Being in business most of the time is 24/7. 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. It requires lots of attention, requires thinking ahead, handling the present, and sometimes covering your tracks as you have to move on. My advice after 35 years is the one, know your market, who you're selling to. 2, who do you need to buy your products and services? 3, give outstanding service. 4, maintain a sterling reputation. 5, do outstanding work that differentiates you from others. And 6, listen, listen, listen. People will tell you what they want, if you will just listen. Remember, it's not just about the money, but also remember, it is always about the money. It can also be a lot of fun when you're successful. And that is how I see it on this April the 26th in the year of 2022. That's our show for today. We want to thank the audience. We appreciate you. Thank Michael Barber. Thank our G-List guest, Brian Wire. Thank our sponsor, Best Girl Inc. Thank Emily Hedrick, the communicator, Sean Jones, the organizer and producer. Remember, enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.